The reading on today's topic, The Law of Karma, Bondage or Soul Release, from the book Rays of the One Light. It's a beautiful commentary that fulfills one of the most important aspects of the mission of our masters to show the unity between the East and the West, between the scriptures of the East and the West. So let us see what the Bible and the Gita have to say about this subject. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. The Epistle of St. Paul to the Galatians contains this oft quoted statement: Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. In Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramhansa tells a story from the life of the Benares saint Trilanga Swami. A skeptic once determined to expose Trilanga as a charlatan. A large bucket of calcium lime mixture used in whitewashing walls was placed before the Swami. Master, the materialist said in mock reverence, I have brought you some clabbered milk. Please drink it. Trilanga unhesitatingly drained to the last drop the container full of burning lime. In a few minutes, the evildoer fell to the ground in agony. Help, Swami, help, he cried. I am on fire. Forgive my wicked test. The great yogi broke his habitual silence. Scoffer, he said, you did not realize when you offered me poison that my life is one with your own. Except for my knowledge that God is present in my stomach, as in every atom of creation, the lime would have killed me. Now that you know the divine meaning of boomerang, never again play tricks on anyone. The well-purged sinner, healed by Trilanga's words, slunk feebly away. Yogananda goes on to say, the reversal of pain was not due to any volition of the master, but came about through unerring application of the law of justice, which upholds creation's farthest swinging orb. Men of God realization like Trilanga allow the divine law to operate instantaneously. They have banished forever all thwarting cross currents of ego. Not by reason alone, but by self-realization are the ins and outs of destiny fully understood. Their web, though tied forever to the post of ego motivation, is too intricate to be perceived as a single thread. Only great masters can see it with clarity. It is visible to them in all its workings, not from within the tangle, but from above in superconsciousness. As Sri Krishna said in the 4th chapter, 18th stanza of the Bhagavad Gita, he who beholds inaction in action and action in inaction is wise among men. He is one with the Spirit. He has attained the true goal of all action, perfect freedom. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. Such a beautiful commentary on a subject that plays out every day in our lives. Yogananda ji is telling us that every thought, every action is energy. And physics itself says now that energy is not neither created nor destroyed. So once we have set something into motion, it remains fulfilled or unfulfilled until it finds its target. When fulfilled in the divine will, it completes its circle in harmony. Otherwise, it is a seed waiting to flower at the appropriate time. And this is what we call karma. Now, there are many, sometimes there are notions that people have about karma. It is commonly used to indicate past, the fruits of past action. It's not just limited to that. The word karma refers to action not only of the past, but of the present and also of the future. And yes, the effects of past actions are also referred to as karma. And Yogananda ji tells us that there are many influences to how we act and why we act. We like to think that we are acting out of free will, but he said almost always we are acting out of influences and not by free will. And what are those influences? Many are those influences. Of course, our past samskars, our habits, our tendencies from the past heavily influence. They are all in the subconscious mind. Every moment is being recorded in the subconscious mind. So we want to be careful what are we telling our mind. But all those past influences residing in the subconscious mind are constantly influencing our conscious mind in every thought, in every action. Then, of course, there are influences of the civilization that we are living in. Then there's the influence of the community, the family, the nationality, the nation that we are living in. There's the influence of the neighborhood that we're living in. Yogananda ji would say, if you're living in an aristocratic neighborhood, that's the way you walk and dress and talk. Isn't it fascinating how so many different influences, the culture, the tradition, all of these various influences are affecting every moment the thoughts that arise in our consciousness and therefore the actions that proceed from that thought. Now, are we acting wisely? That needs due reflection. And that is what this topic is illuminating us today about. As it is said in the Bible, St. Paul writes to his people that be not deceived, God is not mocked. Look, sometimes we think, oh, you know what, God is not doing anything about all the atrocities in this world. He doesn't do anything. We have to mete out justice in this world. Well, he's saying God is not mocked. It does not help for us to act out karmic involvements without wisdom. Because he said, whatsoever we reap, whatsoever we sow, we will reap. So there is no justice. We might think, oh, but he did the same thing or she did the same thing. I just reacted. I just retaliated. It was completely fair. You know, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But well, the St. Paul is clearly writing, God is not mocked. It does not behove us to accept mercy and grace from the divine when we do not adhere to the laws that operate on this plane. So wise is he who does not react but responds in accordance with the law. There is a story about Buddha whose distant cousin was his devotee. And over time, they had their differences. He didn't like some of the things that Buddha said and did. And he began to, in spirit, move farther and farther away from Buddha. And he took a few disciples of Buddha along with him. And they would work against Buddha. And one day, Buddha was giving a sermon at the foothills of a mountain. And this group got onto the top of the mountain and loosened a boulder. Now, Buddha, the divine instrument that he was, the boulder rolls down the mountain, and it was intended to crush Buddha. But Buddha, as I said, being the divine instrument that he was, the boulder rolls down the mountain and stops just beside Buddha. And people were amazed, they were shocked. They said, they were angry against the cousin and the group of devotees at what they had done. And Buddha raised his finger. He said, let's be silent. Do not react. This is karma. And the calmness and even mindedness with which Buddha responded to what came to him uninvited. And this is exactly what Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna in the Gita, that when something is coming to us uninvited, consider it as coming from God. On the scales of karma, he said, respond with even mindedness and calmness. Do not respond with anger. Do not respond with jealousy, with frustration, whatever the situation may be. He said, in fact, inwardly offer up that situation, that thought, even if that thought arises, offer it back to God in self offering. Offer that would-be action was that was going to be released from the from your quiver of arrows, offer it back to the divine. This is a true sacrifice. This is the true yajna that we need to perform moment by moment. Any thought that does not have the sanction of divine will, that is not rooted in the harmony of divine will, friends, let it be very clear to us, is a karma waiting to, is an action that is waiting to entangle us further in delusion. There are no two ways about it. So, as they say, Yogananda ji writes that before we act, there is freedom. But once we act, it is like we have released that arrow from our quiver. Now it has to find its target. If it was released in God conscious will, it will find the target of fulfillment. But if it was released with ego motivation and selfishness, it is going to find the target, as we know, of misery, of disappointment, of frustration that is waiting to resolve itself through another entangled action, karma, and so on. So, the story that Yogananda ji writes about Trailanga Swami, there's an important point that he makes, that how quickly was the retribution to the man who was trying to scoff and mock at Trailanga Swami, as St. Paul writes to his disciples. He said, God is not mocked. And the same plays out in that story. Trailanga Swami is not mocked. I mean, you may come with that intention, but the boomerang, he said, now I hope you know what boomerang effect is. That Trailanga Swami was so rooted in the consciousness of God that God, the divine power, was present in every cell of his body, that it simply could not, that even the poison that entered his body was converted into light. That is the power of a consciousness that is rooted in God. Friends, and that is a way to live in this world but not of it. Then miseries, sufferings cannot touch us because the light pervades every cell of our body. And whatever enters this consciousness also is influenced by that light. But any other influences outside of God's light, outside of God's love, does not have that power. In fact, the only power it has over us is to put us into the abyss of disappointments, delusions, and suffering. So let's also come to another point where Yogananda ji writes in the autobiography. He said one of the reasons why the man who wanted to punish Trailanga Swami instantly felt the retribution of the karmic law. It's because, he said, Trailanga Swami, the thwarting cross currents of ego was not present in Trailanga Swami. Now let's look at it this, let's understand it this way. Yogananda ji would say the farther a wave is away from the ocean, the bosom of the ocean, the farther we are playing with delusion, the more intensely we are playing with delusion. And therefore, thoughts and actions we may set into motion takes a longer rhythm to come back to us. So sometimes we put out a thought, we fulfill an action, and we're like, we are very happy because temporarily we have felt that fleeting pleasure of fulfillment without the wisdom of knowing whether it was or not the right thing to do. But temporarily our ego is satisfied and we feel, this felt so good. Later, many years later, or sometimes incarnations later, and that is why often we don't understand why is this happening to me, because something was set into motion in some incarnations in the past which we have forgotten. And but right now the seed has flowered, and so the environment is perfect for its flowering, so it's standing before us, but we do not have the wisdom to know why this is standing in front of us. We have lost track of the cycles of time. So there's the higher the wave is away from the bosom of the ocean, the longer rhythms of time. You see, more and more incarnations, more and more years, the longer the cycles of time, after which that boomerang effect comes back to us. But when that wave is very close to the bosom of the ocean, just like Yogananda ji once told Swamiji, just a bulge of the ocean. And that's what the masters come to represent and are telling us, that this is how the wave needs to play with the ocean. It has to be very close to the ocean, which means that the wave is a bulge only in accordance with the ocean's command for the wave to play. as needed. So he says, just a bulge of the ocean, and the closer we are to the bosom of the ocean, the closer, and the boomerang effect also is much comes back much quicker. So even in that state, sometimes say we are not yet fully God realized, but we are very close there. What happens? You will see that thoughts and actions you put out very quickly begin to manifest. A sage says, be well, and he instantly heals somebody who needs healing. Because you see, there are no thwarting cross currents of ego. There is no ego that stands between the saint and God. In fact, the ego has been purified so that it is an instrument for the saint. So, likewise, friends, the more we can get out, the more we can get the ego out of the way, or rather, the more we can purify the ego so it becomes purely an instrument of the divine will rather than for our own selfish desires or ego motivations. You will see the more the power of our word to manifest what we want in this world. And let's be sure that what we want is in harmony with what the divine wants from us. Because looking at with due reflection, friends, again and again, it's good for us to remind ourselves that this breath is not created by me, this body is not created by me. I find myself in this world, in this civilization, in this family, in this nation. Yes, we chose it before we took birth in this into this world. However, but who is the source of it all? It's not us. We are the effect. The cause is God. The source is God. All the more reason for us in every moment, moment by moment, the true yajna that needs to happen within us is that continuous self offering, asking the masters, what do you want? How should we do this? What is the right course of action here? What's trying to happen here? Instead of what's right for me? I'm not happy with this state of affairs. I don't want to do this, and I like it this way. I like my morning coffee in this particular way, or my tea in this way. You know, we can indulge ourselves with these little whims and fancies, as Yoganandaji writes in the autobiography of a yogi, but don't get too far with that play on the ocean. You know, be like a child. Yoganandaji would say, God loves. He said, suffer little children to come unto me, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven. But don't be attached. When we play out with the spirit of a child, God loves it. Master used to play so many things out with Swamiji and his disciples. Where you remember how he shot those parachutes into the air, and he was trying to tell Swamiji that the spiritual path is not a grave path; it's a path of fun. God wants us to play like little children, but that's important. Play like little children. Don't be attached. Don't be attached to the fruits of your action. Don't be attached to this consciousness of the body, of the I, of the me, of the myself. Don't be attached to ego centeredness. Because the more we attach ourselves to a certain thought and a certain outcome of the thought, I would like this to unfold in this way. The more we attach ourselves, you will see that the potential for disappointment is also all the more greater. Because you see, we have installed our ego motivated will at the center of things, and the ego has no power. It has no power to manifest what you want. Only God has that power. And God is not somewhere outside of us, God is within us. But what is it that we are listening to? Now, there are two competing forces inside us. One is our ego, one is the soul. The soul is always trying to call us back to God. The soul is always trying to awaken us to live in wisdom. The ego is calling us away from all that the soul wants. Master would say the soul loves to meditate, but the ego does not. So, how do we come back? And Swami, the Master writes very clearly, not by reason alone, but by self realization are the ins and outs of destiny fully understood. Plus, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, I know all your past lives, but you do not know me or any of them. You see, as Master said, reason cannot help us figure out why something is happening. It can help you navigate your way in this world of material appearances. But beyond the senses, it does not have power or sway. Beyond what the senses tell you, we need to employ the power of intuition, which comes from daily meditation. And so these practices that Yogananda ji has given us, friends, many tools and techniques he has given us, practice them, make use of them, allow those techniques to manifest their power in your life. All it takes is for us, with loving heart and sincerity, to offer ourselves. That is again the true sacrifice of self offering. Not because we will find peace at the end of meditation, not because I will find success of this particular desire fulfilled at the end of that meditation. Yogananda ji would say, meditate because you love God. Meditate because that true nature in you needs to be awakened. And when we enter before the masters, and when we enter into the temple of our consciousness with that love, then that love awakens, because you're calling out to that love. Your heart is calling out to that love. Hey, come, let's enjoy this time together. And and you will see that God responds. I want to, of course, Yogananda ji gives many other tools and tips also on how we can overcome karma with wisdom. Now, yes, regarding the question whether it is bondage or soul release, the simple answer is it is both. It depends on the nature of our thought and action. Like I said, if the seed thought at the center of your action is your ego motivation, it is leading to bondage. But if that seed thought is one that is one that is conceived in God's will, one that is nurtured in the divine power, then of course it is leading you to freedom. The verse in the Gita that Master reminds us of: he who finds action in inaction and inaction in action is wise, because he lives in spirit and he finds the goal of all action, perfect freedom. Isn't it so clear? The Gita is very clearly telling us, if at the end of your action, or if even through your action, you're not feeling that freedom, then he says, you know that you are creating karma. Because when your action is right, when it is rooted in the joy of your higher self, you will feel that perfect inner freedom. What is that perfect inner freedom? That inner freedom is not concerned. It's not concerned about the outcome of your actions. It's not concerned how will people feel if I do this. It's not concerned, what will I do if this doesn't go well. No, it is completely free. Swamiji, Swami Kriyananda, of course, I mean, his life was one of persecution, so much so that he would say, I eat persecution for breakfast. And there was this particular time when he was going through a very difficult lawsuit. And this particular day, he was in court for a full day, being aggressively interviewed by, of course, the person from SRF. And Swamiji withstood it all. And of course, people were concerned. And after he finished, at the end of the day, they came to Swamiji. They asked Swamiji, Swamiji, how are you feeling? And Swamiji, with cool, good humor, he says, stirred but not shaken. For those who know, for those who have seen James Bond movies, of course, it's a play on James Bond, who likes this martini. I think shaken but not stirred. So, but to be able to take what God gives us with even mindedness and calmness, Swamiji was a perfect example in that moment of being able to take, no matter, it's not easy, it is difficult, but we don't want to crumble under that pressure of, it's difficult because it feels difficult when our ego begins to take charge. But the more we can retreat ourselves into the spine, into the consciousness of the soul, the more we will find the strength. Maybe we are stirred, but we are not shaken yet, and the more we lean on God for his strength, that's where our strength comes from. We don't have to do it ourselves. In fact, we cannot do it ourselves. So call more to God, draw more on God's power that is right within you. We need to, the more we practice calling on God, the more we practice leaning on God's power within us, the more we are able to awaken that power within us. Because I know sometimes people say, oh, I know it's easy to say God is the doer, God is the doer, but I simply can't feel it. Well, yes, that is understandable because we are looking at a momentum of many incarnations and lifetimes where myself, has been at the center of it all. And we like to think that I am the doer because it's the delusion of body consciousness. It so completely grabs us because we are using the senses of that is established in this body. That is why we need to retreat. All of our practices tell us we are not just this body. There is energy behind this body. There is a astral world behind this body. There is a causal world behind the astral and the physical worlds. Let's tune into deeper and deeper realities. The more we can tune into deeper and deeper realities that way, whatever unfolds before us, we are also able to tune into deeper realities of what's unfolding. Circumstances, Yogananda ji would say, are neutral. They're not good or bad. It's our receptivity, the way we look at it, that makes them good or bad. But if we are able to go behind that moment, we will be able to intuit the thought, the energy, or the lesson that is in there for us. This is one of my favorite stories that I tell people about Bernard and Master. Bernard, this devotee, I'll make it quick because I think all of us know the story. He had a knack of getting into accidents, and he would tell Master, why is this happening to me? I'm doing all the right things, I'm not on the wrong lane, I'm not parking in the wrong place, but somebody comes and hits me from behind. And Master tells him, you must be careful. And every time he would go to Master would tell him the same thing. You must be more careful. Somerset Bernard at one point thought Master is simply not getting what I'm saying. And then, of course, it's Master's grace. He pondered about it and then he realized, yes, that in his life he was careless. Now, as Master says again in this, only great masters can see with clarity. It is visible to them in all its workings, not from within the tangle, but from super consciousness. That when we lift our mind, our energy, uh, our intention above and beyond the ego and rest it in soul consciousness, and from that super conscious plane you will see, oh, I know exactly why this is happening. Like Buddha said, this is karma, let's not react. Why God wills in a certain way a certain action, a certain circumstance, it's not ours to argue with Divine Mother. In fact, Swamiji said a very beautiful thing once. He said, God cannot come to many people because if he came, they would argue with God. And isn't that true? We would argue with God. So why would he come to us? Krishna says very clearly in the Gita that to the carping spirit, I will not reveal myself. So let us see how we can find ourselves more and more in harmony with divine laws, to rest more and more in God's bosom. Don't aspire to be that high wave on the ocean. Oh, look, I'm so tall. The taller you are, the smaller you are. That's the irony of the wave, of the tall waves on the ocean. Be close to the ocean. As Master said, just a bulge of the ocean. That's where we want to be. And then the law of karma, you will see, plays out in a way that brings you complete freedom. The goal of all action, friends, the goal of all our thoughts, all our action, let the goal be freedom. Ask yourself, am I feeling really free? And don't delude yourself, because I've seen tremendous is the power of the ego, of the mind, to trick us. We like to be in self denial. We will justify as much as we can to protect ourselves. No, be brutally honest with yourself. Be kind, but be honest with yourself. If we are not going to be honest with ourselves, you know, who else will help us? So be honest with, you don't have to tell the whole world. No, but in your own self, in your own heart, at the end of the day, Swamiji would say, keep a journal, keep a diary. And in that, note your thoughts, your actions, your heart's feelings, and be sincere and honest in that, in what you need to change. Because as the Gita says, the goal of all action must be freedom. If there is no freedom, there is bondage. And what does bondage mean? Lack of happiness. It only means suffering. But God has shown us the way out of it. Let's choose that highway. Somebody once said, all my life I have known the right thing to do, but I didn't do it. And often we can be in that category because to do the right thing is not easy. We like to find shortcuts. Don't don't go for the shortcut. You will find it is the longest road back home. So take the power of meditation, as Master said, reason will not help. So we need that inner strength and power that comes with daily practice of Kriya Yoga, of energization exercises, of Hangsa, of Om technique. As we begin to become more and more rooted in our deep spine, you will naturally find the strength. It's like when the tree blossoms and is right and is ripe, the fruit will appear. Nothing can stand in our way. So, when we are doing the right things, the fruit of inner freedom, inner happiness, inner strength, and power to take even difficult situations, to be calm like Buddha was when the boulder was rolling close to him, you will see that we find the strength to stand rooted in the consciousness of God. And that will bring us soul freedom. With that, Jai Guru, thank you for being with us this morning.